Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Menoposse Ballers, the only podcast where midlife meets mischief and nobody apologizes for the hot flashes or the hilarity. Quick heads up, this episode contains mature themes, wild tangents, and the word balls, said approximately 69 times. Yes, we counted. You're welcome. So, if you're easily offended, clutch those pearls now. Or better yet, pop on a cooling neck wrap, grab your mocktail of choice, and settle in. Because whether we're talking about sports, hormones, or the literal balls of life, we're doing it with sass, heart, and a whole lot of side-eye. Fair warning, once you join the Menoposse, there's no going back. And honestly, you won't want to.
I want to give a shout out to Samantha Jones, because Samantha Jones, in that episode of Sex and the City where she's on the stage wearing a wig because she was also going through chemo, and she's having like the worst hot flash of all hot flashes, and she rips off the wig and says "F it" and whatever she says, and her hot younger boyfriend is like applauding. Like, she paved the way for the conversation. So, balls up for Samantha Jones.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sobriety isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's the ultimate life hack. I'm Alysse Bryson, your fearless guide to a world where hangovers are canceled, fun is mandatory, and we still know how to shut down a dance floor, just with better shoes.
And I'm Tamar Routly, aka T-Bouge, your co-pilot, chaos coordinator, and the one who keeps Alysse from turning this podcast into a full-blown reality show. Buckle up, sober party people.
From lifestyle and travel to pop culture and zero-proof cocktails, we're serving up the stories, trends, and guests that prove sobriety isn't just about what you're missing. It's about finally remembering where you left your keys. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the debut episode of the Menoposse Ballers. This is a brand new segment from the Sober Curator where mood swings meet mocktails and menopause meets moxie. I'm your host, Alysse Bryson, and let me tell you, when your hormones are flipping tables and your sobriety is quietly in the corner whispering affirmations, things get complicated. We created the Menoposse Ballers because, let's be honest, midlife is already a ride, and navigating it without alcohol, that's a whole new level of realness. From hot flashes to hormone havoc, we are unpacking the wild intersection of sobriety and menopause, with plenty of laughs, insight, and probably a few cooling fans along the way. But I am not alone in this sweaty and sobriety showdown. No, my other Gen Xers are here. They're going through it with me. And joining me today are some of the absolute legends from the Sober Curator contributor crew. I will introduce them now. We've got T-Bouge, my co-host, the hormone truth teller in chief. She's all about mind-body wellness, deep wisdom, and the occasional, did I just cry because of a commercial moment? Welcome, T-Bouge.
Thanks for having me.
And then we have our resident wellness coach, Megan Swan. She is fashion forward. She is fiercely funny and the queen of finding the silver linings in the perimenopausal chaos. She also is probably done the most research for this episode. And usually she does all of it while looking flawless. And last but not least, we have my local ride or die, my favorite sidekick that I don't like to go anywhere without, Amy Liz Harrison, mother of 8. I always just like to say that because mother of 8, holy cow, it's a lot. Yeah. And she's also our unofficial scientist / snack guru, again, refer to the 8 children, and is here to decode what's actually happening in our bodies with just the right amount of sass and pop culture, because nobody loves pop culture more than me, then maybe Amy. So grab your favorite mocktail, crank up your fan, and settle in with your rollers. You are not alone in the heat. We are in this together, one flash at a time.
Yay!
Wow.
Woo!
That was intense.
Am I your hype girl or what?
100%.
Hypey.
Should I change it from Alysse in the city to Alysse the sober hype girl? I don't know. Maybe
we
We
should
need
take
to
a
work
vote.
on that, the tagline of it. Yeah.
yeah. I'll work on it a little bit while I chisel my chin. Okay, so we're gonna try to keep this episode to the length of a normal hot flash. So 20-25 minutes. Do you think we can do that, ladies?
I
It
think
depends.
so.
If we have any mood swings, that might be tough.
Well, that's a way to transition us there, T-Bouge. Is this a mood swing or a relapse warning? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about symptoms and how they affect us at the various stages of sobriety or recovery, whatever buzzword works for you. We don't care about your labels. We're just glad you're here.
Okay, I want to start off by saying when I actually read menopause and sobriety and how a lot of women that enter into perimenopause and menopause relapse, it doesn't surprise me because there are times over the last few years as I've started to recognize that I'm actually in perimenopause where I feel batshit crazy. And I have actually had to go back on some medication because of the everything I was experiencing and I couldn't handle my emotions. And so for someone like me, if I have one drink, like if I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong headspace, I completely understand. Especially, I mean, Amy has 8 children. You know, we have 3. The stuff that life gives you, if we're not aware of what's about to hit us and we don't talk about it and realize, you know, we're actually quite normal and we're actually going through the same thing and there is solutions to this, I can definitely see why people would relapse.
I think too, for me, I think about my resentments and my tendency still in my alcoholic mind to create things instead of look at things based on facts. And so that's a big deal for me, is just kind of like hitting pause and just going, okay, hold on. You know, is this real or am I assuming this? And, you know, just kind of asking myself those questions and like, what am I afraid of? I was just sharing with Alysse last night that, you know, that underlying sometimes fear, I can imagine how it would be very easy to relapse if I didn't have any tools in my toolkit, whatever that looks like for every individual sober person. But yeah, I think I would be a candidate for relapse if I didn't stay plugged in and talking about it.
I think what most of us don't appreciate, even though we may have read some things, is just how our hormones, be it estrogen or otherwise, affect every single system in our body, not just the reproductive parts, if you will. And, you know, a good way to resonate with this is understanding how much your emotions, your energy, your sleep, your cravings, all of that changes when you're still menstruating in a given month. And so when you're on the perimenopause roller coaster, those fluctuations are even more dramatic. And that's why for so many women, it brings on mood disorders or, you know, like way beyond brain fog or lethargy, and starts feeling like they're unsure of their mental sanity. And can be really scary. And I see why a lot of women go sort of to address that problem, not necessarily thinking it's something that could be addressed potentially with hormonal therapy opposed to other mood disorder medication.
You know, being the oldest one in this panel today and the one who, at least I thought, had said goodbye to Aunt Flo, more on that maybe later in the episode, but hindsight being 2020, when I look back to 3 years ago, which was the first I know now the first full year that I had stopped having periods, I was insane. And talk about mood disorders. I made erratic decisions. And I also had some things going on in my life. My dad had open heart surgery. My brother-in-law had open heart surgery. I bought a house, like all big life changes as well, mixed in there. But I was affecting how I was showing up at work. It affected decisions that I made. My impulsivity was off the charts. I didn't drink, but yeah, I made a lot of decisions that 3 years later, I still have the consequences from. Ergo, I live where I live. And I bought the house that I bought. So, plus Amy just loves it when I work ergo into the conversation.
Yes.
So I am just really happy that we're having this conversation today, because these conversations weren't even happening 3 years ago. If they were, I didn't know about them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, and I am seeing more and more and more headlines. And obviously the more I click on them, the more my algorithm gives me more. But those headlines didn't exist a couple years ago either. So I'm so glad that the Gen X women are taking charge and talking about these tough topics and what we do about them, and that it's getting dealt with, so that maybe the women that come in behind us will have more information and more tools.
And one of the things I wanted to mention is that this all started because I believe one of our Sober Curators who couldn't make it today, Anne-Marie, she had actually emailed us all and said, hey, check out this Oprah special, The Menopause Revolution. And so we all watched it and we did a review on that episode, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was very eye-opening. It just really shared how, and I've talked to friends of mine who are doctors that, you know, they don't educate doctors about all the stuff with perimenopause. So like there's so many, I was just talking before we started recording about, I think it's called The New Menopause. I'm reading it right now. When they were listing off, and I think Megan, you said there's like 75 symptoms, you go to a doctor and they know they're not trained on menopause. It's very brief. They have no idea. And so, you know, and part of why we have all these balls, which you saw at the beginning of the episode, and why we came up with the Menoposse Ballers, is because we need to start talking about this more. And I think it's almost critical to help what we do with the Sober Curators. We help people build a sober lifestyle, right? We help people have, there's content that help people stay sober, right? Because we don't care how you got sober. We just care that you stay sober. And so that's why we bought these balls. I actually ship them all over. I can't ship them to everywhere. Megan doesn't take them to Mexico.
Megan forgot to travel with her balls, which is a lesson learned.
Yeah, lesson learned. But I'd like to see those going through security. Some dude lift them up and ask, "What
I think you should.
I should."
Amy,
it would be a fun experience.
I think you're an expert. You fly more than anybody. So can you talk to us about what it's like to travel with your balls?
Well, okay. So I haven't traveled with my balls yet. Tonight will be the maiden voyage. So I'll have to loop back on that. However, I would like to request that my Funko maybe get a set of mini balls.
Ooh,
I mean,
cute.
We could work on that.
Has anyone traveled with a glass dildo? I haven't decided if I should do that carry on or should I check it.
Okay, but I have a story because I kind of did. Okay, stick with me here. So this was back when I was working for the TV station, and the parent company at one point was located in Dallas. And so I had gone there for a multi-station meeting of sorts. And at the time they were really into their creative department was called Hatch. And so everything was like egg themed. They were all about the egg, right? Cracking
yoni?
ideas open, all that stuff. So I won something of the year, and I got this very heavy, very large glass statue that I think their intention was that it was to look like an egg, but it did not look like an egg. And if I could just easily go grab that tchotchke right now, I would, but it's in storage. It was an oblong. It was an oblong glass object that easily weighed over 10 pounds. And I was traveling with carry-on only. So I did have to go through security. And it was the kind of statue that had its own, like the box itself was probably $100 with the like molded styrofoam, like most ridiculous award ever. And I was traveling with my boss at the time, who was a male. And when we got to security, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden he ninja'd himself behind me because he wanted to see what was going to happen when I went through. And sure enough, when my bag went through, it all of a sudden it stopped, went back, went forward, went back, went forward, went back, looked at me, looked down, looked at me, looked down. And then they were like, ma'am, can we please pull you to the side? So
That's awesome.
So I made a good call just buying a new one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Listen, I have a TSA story too that I would love to bring up. Did anybody happen to see, and I don't remember where this came from, but the idea was that too many people who are going through the scanner, which I do because of my defibrillator, my heart defibrillator. Yeah, this one. So too many people who are going through this thing actually have like swamp crotch going on. So they have like an overheated crotch. So from like just running around, traveling, whatever, they're just like sweaty.
Menopause, perimenopause.
This is my point. And so they're trying to figure out like what to do about that because it's time consuming because then you got to pull the person, you know, out of the scanner and just like do the, like show them where it alarmed and then do the pat down and all of that. And, you know, I thought to myself, gosh, maybe this could be like a new 12-step like service position, like crotchcooling.com or something where like you put out like fans, small, discreet fans that go under the chairs in the summertime, and they just blow straight up, kind of like a, you know, a car, like the air conditioning that will come up from the, you know, usually heated parts in the wintertime to cool everything down in the summertime. I'm just throwing it out there. Could be a business opportunity for someone.
The Crotch Cooler 5000.
Yes, crotchcoolers.com.
Well, I have seen those clip-on fans that are like small now, but super powered. You could just put one down there. But I think you'd want to be careful. Like it's going to depend on your grooming situation. Like there's a lot of factors that probably need to be factored in.
It'd have to be plastic
Especially-
too to be so I see the.
True.
Well, especially noise.
Well, I don't think you'd want.
But other travel tip that speaks to the 75 symptoms that I've heard lately that again most women probably don't think of. You know, the estrogen drops and everything gets dry. But one thing that isn't thought of is your eyes. So how important it is to travel.
I thought you were going to say something else. I was like,
Your crotch dried out from the crotch cooler fan. Just kidding. Continue.
I didn't say it. I'm talking about our eyes.
back to the eyes.
Yes, back to the
I see where you're going with this.
You need to travel with some drops because it seems like not a big thing, but you can get dry eyes to the point where they start to have little cuts in them and you get an infection. And these are other symptoms I've read about lately of women who think like, oh yeah, like my eyes are a little dry. It just spirals out of control.
Yep.
Okay,
And
so
your average eye doctor is not where you would think to go for your perimenopause symptoms.
Maybe what the business idea then is a perimenopausal travel toolkit
There we go.
that has a fan, eye drops,
Some balls.
some
Mhm.
balls,
Yeah.
normal
lotion.
size balls, and balls for your little Funko. So maybe that's the plan.
Some affirmations we could put in there.
Yes.
Definitely.
You are not crazy. You are loved.
Yep.
Well, and you know, I remember when I first had a hot flash, and mine aren't very lengthy, which, you know, thank goodness I don't get super sweaty, but they're awkward. I mean, I'm just like, wow, I'm a little heater. I am heating up and it's just like, I'm boiling now. You go completely red. I mean, that's awkward. There are so many situations that a woman has to go through, whether you're going through the border, customs, speaking of travel, you show up and you're standing at, customs. Where are you going? And all of a sudden you have a hot flash. I mean, that could definitely be interpreted as like, oh, she's guilty. She's got something shoved up there that she's trafficking. Like, you never know, right? It's awkward. It is one of those things.
It'd also be a good decoy. It'd be a good decoy.
It could be, yeah. And just say, sorry, officer, I'm having a hot flash. I am not smuggling an ounce of cocaine up my hoo-ha.
Not today, anyway.
Not today, anyway. That was my previous life. I'm sober now. I want to take it back to the time other women who were going through perimenopause and menopause, it was not talked about. I remember when my mother went through menopause, I'm like, what an awful human being. Like, I'm like, I love my mom dearly. I say this with love, but I'm just like, why did she get so mean? Like, what happened? When did like a switch flip? Like, I didn't understand because nobody talked about it. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, it's menopause. I'm like,
there was no after school special about this topic.
No after school special. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to create this segment, talk about stuff as it relates to sober living, menopause, and just women's health, is that it needs to be talked about more, right? Mm-hmm. Because the stuff that I'm going through, I know my friends and I can have honest conversations like, oh man, last night I was out for dinner and a hot flash in the middle of like we joke around. I went to the Pink concert in September and one of my friends, I looked across the table and she's like sweating. She's like, whew, that's a nasty hot flash right now, right? But we can talk about it. And anytime something happens, they're like, perimenopause, right? And it gives us a reason to laugh about it now instead of being, because I was terrified. I'm like, if I ever turn into my mom, please shoot me. Like, I do not want to be that mean of a human being because then I cannot live up to my Canadian reputation.
I have two things. One is that I read on the internet, which means it's probably definitely true, that whatever symptoms your mom had, you are likely to have a same or similar experience. So my question is to the group about that, if that is true for any of you. It actually is true for me with my mom based off of the conversation we had. And then before you answer that question, what I do want to say is I want to give a shout out to Samantha Jones, because Samantha Jones in that episode of Sex and the City where she's on the stage wearing a wig because she was also going through chemo and she's having like the worst hot flash of all hot flashes. And she rips off the wig and says, fuck it. And whatever she says, and her hot younger boyfriend is like applauding, like she paved the way for the conversation. So balls up for Samantha Jones.
Yeah, that was a good episode. And yes, that's true. That's actually something I recommend that you do if you still have the opportunity to talk to your mom about it. It is much more accurate prediction than any textbook in terms of the timeline that you'll go through it and also what symptoms you should be expecting. And I think it's just so much nicer to have, whenever you can anticipate things are coming, even if it's not the best things, instead of it just showing up one day and you're shocked. And I think it could be I chatted with it was the second or third time, but this time I actually took notes because I, kind of forgotten the details and asked much more in-depth questions. I think it was a healing conversation for her, precisely because there wasn't really this place to talk about it back then. Maybe she had a couple of close friends that were going through it at the same time, and she seemed to have a good relationship with her doctor. But other than that, there weren't characters on shows. There weren't, I don't know how many menopause books have come out in the last 2 or 3 years. I know I've read 3 of them, and now I have this, the new Menopause. I highly recommend I listened to it after I saw the Oprah show, Naomi Watts's Dare I Say, because it has a lot of really valuable scientific markers, but also it's super fun and talks about her sex life with who's her hot famous boyfriend, husband. And another one that was not mentioned on that show that I think should be required reading for, I would say, anyone, certainly women as of 17, because it's kind of a misnomer, the title. It's called Menopause Brain by Dr. Alysse Bryson. However, the main point is how women's brains prune themselves essentially, or shift and change right after puberty, the 3 Ps: puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause. And a lot of the stuff, had I known post-puberty and certainly postpartum, would have been really helpful. She's talking about how, your brain is prioritizing that chapter of your life and kind of realigning itself, which feels like you're going crazy, or, you've lost this certain realm of your mental capacity for a short time. It usually, comes back, but there's like a year window where it's quite scary. But knowing that's what's happening, opposed to this is the new normal, I think is really helpful.
I have a question for Amy, because she's going to get to have this conversation 4 times with her 4 daughters. But Amy, has it occurred to you, you are the author of Mommy Goes to Meetings. Have you considered Mommy Goes Through Menopause?
I mean, I haven't until this moment, which means obviously I think it has to happen. So I love it. I'm all in. Yes, my mom actually, I asked her about her menopause journey. And I said, I started with, what age did you go through menopause? And she was like, well, I don't really remember. And I believe her, because I feel like it was a thing for the boomers that they were told to shoulder on or expected to shoulder on, regardless of what was happening in their lives. And what I find interesting is at my husband's corporate last, cultural and diversity kind of training, they actually talked about menopause. And they talked about the concept of a woman being in a conference room, giving a presentation, and then suddenly having a hot flash come over her, and what that would feel like for a woman, right? And I was like, yes, thank you. Because the internal, just complete embarrassment and almost borderline shame, but knowing that you shouldn't be shaming yourself because you can't help it. But, thinking, gosh, what is everyone else thinking while this is happening? And the whole cognitive sort of play that's taking place on that stage in that moment. People need to know about that. People need to know that happens. And in my opinion, we got to just normalize that.
I agree with that. And I just, in terms of, because my mom was the same way, right? You just didn't really talk about it. Now she did, I did actually look this up, is that it can be hereditary, but it doesn't have to be, because there's so many factors that actually determine that, right? It's a lot of it is health, right? And so my mom went through menopause at 44. I'm turning 50 and I'm only just going into perimenopause. For her, she had some really severe symptoms, but she also didn't live an incredibly healthy lifestyle, right? It wasn't brutal, and I've heard that before, because I've heard a lot of conversations about that. So that made me feel a little bit better. But here's a fun fact. If you're sober and you're eating well and you're managing stress and you have access to hormone-friendly healthcare, it can actually help navigate it differently than when our parents did. And I think that is also if it's hereditary and we have a lot of the same symptoms as our mothers did, maybe they're not actually that bad, because we're doing things today and having better discussions, more open discussions than our mothers had. So, and I think that's the gift. One of the many gifts of sobriety is we're always working on ourselves. So that could lessen those symptoms for us.
For sure. We
Amen.
all know how alcohol, makes what happens in the body when you drink alcohol. You imagine it's just like pouring fuel in the fire to a hot flash.
Balls up to that.
Insomnia, because you have hot flashes.
Well, I'm just so glad we all got sober before going through menopause, because I can't imagine going through these symptoms and drinking. When I was drinking, I mean, everything was over exaggerated and it was like everything was the world's biggest deal. And I'm kind of sort of having like glimpses of that in my perimenopause. So I don't think combining the two would be wise.
Well, it's also the same as like, for me, I'm really glad that I got sober before social media was like a thing, because I was a drunk dialer. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I would have been a hot mess on social media. Not that I'm like amazing now, but like I would have been it would have been a lot. You know what I'm saying? I would have been defriended and blocked, I'm sure. You know, I do want to switch gears to, I mentioned that I stopped having periods several years ago, 3 years ago. But recently in the last 2 months, and you all know this story, I had a surprise stop in from Aunt Flo that really rattled me, because I thought like it was done. And like, there was, I didn't need to think about it anymore. Like I'd moved on. I'd moved on. And then here it was, and it was a shock. And I was out in public and I had not had that experience in so long. It is like riding a bike though. You do remember exactly what's going to happen. And it was, it was alarming. I immediately was very concerned. Like, what does this mean? Do I have uterine cancer? Of course, I went down a terrible Google rabbit hole. And then I went and, did all kinds of doctor appointments, and I had an ultrasound and I had an MRI and like all these things. And it turned out I'm fine. And it appears to have been an anomaly, but like, again, there's not any information out about that either. I couldn't really find anything that explained my experience. And I searched. So I'm so glad that there's more and more content coming out and more women having these conversations, because I mean, this is very real life. And then I also echo that I'm really glad to be going through this sober, because ergo, I would have been that was for you, Amy. I would have been a hot mess, more of a hot mess than I already was with my moods, for sure. Yeah.
Balls up to that. Balls up to that. Balls up. So I think, women, first of all, being willing to talk about this a little more is super important. And also just, understanding you're not alone, just like in sobriety. Like, we shouldn't walk through this alone. We're here together to walk through it together.
Well, I wanted to say, like, I think it's important, as that you have the conversation with your daughters, but also we have the conversation with our men. And I've been in a lot of these menopause trainings in a more corporate setting, and there's lots of male executives at these trainings taking interest in knowing, some of their most powerful C-suite are going to be going through this, and like, how can they support them? There's a real shift in attitude, which is amazing. But this isn't just a conversation, or shouldn't just be a conversation between women.
Yeah.
That's true. That's a really, really good point. Mm-hmm. Well, as we wind down this episode, let's go into our sober shots rapid fire question. So I'm going to hit you each up with a question. T-Bouge, I'm going to start with you. Sober drink of choice, electrolyte water or kombucha with flair?
Kombucha with flair.
Amy Liz Harrison, hot flash hack. Do you have a cooling towel or a rage nap or perhaps a hoo-ha fan?
Well, this isn't a fair answer, so I apologize. I don't have hot flashes actually yet.
So you have none of those things.
I don't have those items, but I can picture myself going on Amazon and buying all of those things. So
I also saw you mentally add them to your cart just in the course of this conversation. Yes.
That's going to happen.
I do have a cooling towel. It's an ice thing for my dog that wraps around her belly. And I actually think that would, dual purpose. Mm-hmm. Megan, sober superpower, night vision for insomnia or the ability to keep your bra on for 12 plus hours?
I don't know. I guess the bra.
And that's kind of a weird one. Yeah, that's kind of a weird one.
I don't really want to go on that long, but okay.
Yeah, no, that's a long one. T-Bouge, Ultimate Sober Hangout. Are you doing an infrared sauna detox or a movie marathon with herbal tea?
Why didn't I get that one?
I think I'd need to do the movie marathon.
All right. Amy, throwback anthem. Man, I Feel Like a Woman or Hot in Hair by Nelly.
Hot hair by Nelly.
Megan, Snack Attack, dark chocolate almonds, or Don't Talk to Me Unless You Brought Fries.
Oh, definitely dark chocolate almonds.
I knew that. And here's for all of you, Style Flex. Are we going athleisure chic with cooling fabric or full-on glam moment for no reason at all?
I'm going the chic.
I'm going to go chic as well.
I'm going to go to Shake Shack and get those fries, aforementioned fries.
Yeah, girl. Get it.
Ergo, I'm going to need the
Balls up.
Ergo. Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming today and bringing your realness and your authenticity and your experiences of the symptoms you are or are not yet having. If you're listening and you have questions or you want to complain or you're having a hot flash or a mood swing and you want to talk about it, email us at thesobercurator@gmail.com or slide into any of our DMs like it's 2012. And now, as we close out this episode, we will end with the infamous Tchotchke Showdown. And today's Tchotchke Showdown, it is special. It is actually a new tchotchke to my collection that was lovingly made by T-Bouge's partner, her ride or die, her wifey for lifey. And I can say that because they just got matching tattoos. Go ahead, T-Bouge. There you go.
Ooh. Balls up.
They're going to be
new
balls up to the new tattoo.
Love a good tat.
And she made me this bedazzled Canadian duck. I drive a Jeep. I collect rubber ducks. I duck people for fun. And this one will not be going in the Jeep, though. I don't want it to melt or anything to happen to it. So this one has a special place on my shelf. But this is the tchotchke of the week, handmade.
Lovely.
Pretty cool.
And maybe she's red because she too is going through a hot flash. Who knows?
There it is.
She's channeling Shania.
Ergo, that's all the time we have. This has been a great episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, getting sober, it does matter, but staying sober matters more. My name is Alysse Bryson, and until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober. Thanks for tuning in, because let's be real, we're way more fun than your ex's drunk texts.
If you laughed, learned, or just need more of our voices in your life, honestly, I mean, who wouldn't? Hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and send this episode to your sober or your I swear I'm only drinking on the weekends besties.
And if you have a story, feedback, or hey, maybe you just want to slide into our DMs like it's 2012, well, you know we're here for it. Find more curated magic at thesobercurator.com. And remember, getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober.